What's going on, guys? It is the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you a pretty cool video, the top 10 worst roller coasters I have ridden. Sadly, I haven't ridden enough bad coasters, so that's why I have family coasters included, because some of these family coasters I hate a lot, or not hate, but I think they're boring or not enjoyable. But here are the top 10 worst coasters I've ever ridden. Number 10 is Blue Streak at Cedar Point. This coaster has some nice airtime, don't get me wrong. It's just too rough to enjoy. It's okay, I guess. I don't know, but Blue Streak, it's rough. The airtime is there, but this coaster is just too rough to enjoy. And it's a little short for an out-and-back Woody, but it was built back in the 1960s. So I totally understand this coaster is old and not the smoothest, but it's just not the most enjoyable. I wish this coaster was retracked by GCI sometime soon in the future. Number 9 is the Dark Knight at Six Flags Great America. Now, some people could argue with me that this coaster is a decent ride, and I do think it's a decent ride. I'm just so used to the layout and overall how the ride is that I'm just not enjoying the coaster as much as if I never rode it before. And overall, this coaster is an okay coaster. It's a little too jerky on some parts, like those tiny drops towards the end of the ride. But this coaster is a cool coaster with its theming. But other than that, this coaster, after you ride it several times, you'll get pretty bored with it. Number 8 is Flight of Fear at Kings Island. This coaster, the theming is cool with this ride, with the alien spaceship and those cool alien statues. But other than that, and the first launch is pretty fun, and the final inversion is fun. Other than that, this coaster is so jerky that it's just tough to enjoy. Plus the lap bar restraints, due to the Premier Ride trains, one of your two feet, I guess, will not be comfortable. This coaster isn't the most comfortable. Plus, I had to wait 45 minutes for this ride. It's not worth the line. Number 7 is Mad Mouse at Michigan's Adventure. And this coaster, all it is a wild mouse coaster. It's just a traditional aerodynamics wild mouse. Plus, this coaster's operations are so slow. Michigan's Adventure really needs to work on their operations. But Mad Mouse, not an enjoyable. It is enjoyable, I guess, but Mad Mouse, it's smooth, but it has some jerky parts. It's just a wild mouse coaster that gets more and more boring every time you ride it. You just ride it once, and then you don't need to ride it again. Number 6 is Adventure Express at Kings Island. Now, this is an okay coaster, but it's just too rough to enjoy. The final lift hill is cool with the theming, and there's this evil statue man thing that tries to pour gold on you, but it's a statue. So it's pretty cool concept. It's some cool animatronic type concept. But due to the ride being super rough and the turns are so sharp that it'll be a rough ride, this coaster makes this list. Number 5, we're getting into the bad ones. Mean Streak at Cedar Point. There are 2 more coasters from Cedar Point that are coming up, but this coaster was built by definitely the worst wooden coaster manufacturer of all time, the Ridden Corporation, and it has one of the worst layouts of all time. Turn after turn after turn. You get to the mid-course brake run, more turns, a few airtime hills with no airtime at all. It's just not a good ride. The ride winds around itself. It's cool, but not a fun ride. It's boring, rough, not enjoyable. It's just not a fun coaster. And that's what I don't like about Mean Streak. This coaster desperately needs the RMC treatment for 2017 or 2018. And I'm saying it again, this coaster desperately needs the RMC treatment. And that's what every single coaster enthusiast wants, for Mean Streak to be RMC'd. Number 4 is Corkscrew at Cedar Point. And this coaster is pretty rough due to parts of it, like there's some sharp bank turns that are rough, the inversions aren't the most enjoyable, and this coaster feels slower than it actually is. It feels like you're going 20 miles per hour instead of 48 miles per hour for some reason. I don't know. This coaster is pretty boring, not the most enjoyable. And overall, the first airtime hill after that drop is rough. It's just a jerky coaster. Not enjoyable. This is just a rough coaster that is more fun to watch than it is to ride, which is very sad. Number 3 is the Cedar Creek Mine Ride, also at Cedar Point. This coaster, I totally get it. It's old, kind of like with Corkscrew being the first coaster to feature 3 inversions. But this coaster was built in 1969 by Aerodynamics. It's an old coaster, and it definitely has aged because it's super rough and jerky. Just not a fun coaster at all. It's just boring. It's a miniature version of Mean Streak to me because it's loud. It has just a bunch of random turns, and it's just not a fun ride. Now we're getting into the 2 coasters that I hate so much. The Ninja without virtual reality at Six Flags St. Louis. Now this coaster with virtual reality is decent, and I thought it was pretty cool. It's a cool concept, but Ninja without virtual reality is so rough. Those inversions, especially that Sidewinder, is brutal. The Helix is jerky. Just not a good coaster without virtual reality. And for some reason, it's kind of weird, but the virtual reality makes the coaster smoother. I don't know what's with that. Like with Iron Dragon at Cedar Point or the New Revolution VR. For some reason, this coaster is smooth with virtual reality, but not smooth without. But it's still pretty rough either way. But this coaster without virtual reality is super bad. But number 1 is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This coaster has everything you would not want out of a coaster. Besides the restraints being good, no matter what seat you're sitting in, you're trimmed to death on that first drop. The overbank turns are so rough and trimmed. The airtime hills don't give any airtime. And this coaster, I wish it was shorter than what it is. It's so rough. It's not enjoyable. Not a fun coaster at all. It's so boring. It's Mean Streak on steroids. Because it's twice as tall. I'm just kidding, guys. If you turned off the video because of that, I'm kind of sorry about that, but this is my true number 1 worst coaster I've ridden, Wolverine Wildcat. This coaster is unbearably rough. The capacity is terrible. The drop isn't that great. When you go up into those long turn sections, you feel very big pieces of pain when you're going up, but down it's not as good. But this coaster is unbearably rough. That the best part of this ride is going through that tunnel before the lift hill, and that's super sad. I just don't like this coaster at all. Every time I ride this, I don't like it. Unless I'm riding the front row, it's decent, but other than the front row, this coaster is unbearably rough and not enjoyable at all. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos.